illusion. As one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen on fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Dharma Pujita Kaitravatra Paramo Nirmatsranam Satam Vedyam Vastavam Atravastu Shivadam Tapa Trayon Mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kim Vapurir Ishwaraha Sadyo Hriday Avarudyate Tra Krite Bihi Sususubis Takshanat. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated. This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam sukumakad amrita dravya samyutam pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam muhur aho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 9, text number 31. By pure meditation, looking at Lord Shri Krishna, he, meaning Bhisma Pitamaha, at once was freed from all material inauspiciousness and was relieved of all bodily pains caused by the arrow wounds. Thus, all the external activities of his senses at once stopped, and he prayed transcendently to the controller of all living beings while quitting his material body. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The material body is a gift of the material energy, technically called illusion. Identification with the material body is due to forgetfulness of our eternal relationship with the Lord. For a pure devotee of the Lord, like Bhismadeva, this illusion was at once removed as soon as the Lord arrived. Lord Krishna is like the sun, and the illusory external material energy is like darkness. In the presence of the sun, there is no possibility that darkness can stand. Therefore, just on the arrival of Lord Krishna, all the material contamination was completely removed, and Bhismadeva was thus able to be transcendentally situated by stopping the activities of the impure senses in collaboration with matter. The soul is originally pure, and so also the senses. By material contamination, the senses assume the role of imperfection and impurity. By revival of contact with the Supreme Pure, Lord Krishna, the senses again become freed from material contaminations. Bhismadeva attained all these transcendental conditions prior to his leaving the material body because of the Lord's presence. The Lord is the controller and benefactor of all living beings. That is the verdict of all Vedas. He is the supreme eternity and living entity amongst all the eternal living beings. And he alone provides all the necessities for all kinds of living beings. Thus he provides all facilities to fulfill the transcendental desires of his great devotee Bhismadeva, who prayed as follows. Well, we see this is called clearing of the mind. The same thing happened whenever Prabhupada would visit a temple. First of all, the announcement that he was going to visit the temple made all the devotees excited. And they engaged usually in preparations, cleaning the temple and doing so many things, decorating it really nice. And as the days approached for his arrival, everyone became more and more enthusiastic to greet Prabhupada and have beautiful arrangements for the deities and have nice prasadam and so many things. And everyone became very excited. And then when Prabhupada came, everyone became ecstatic. And basically in that period, they forgot all, or we forgot all our material desires and just wanted to please Prabhupada. So that's the power of a pure devotee. And imagine seeing Krishna. Imagine the purifying effect of seeing the Lord and greeting the Lord. So we do that every day, Mangal Arati and the different artis of the day. We're actually greeting the Lord and offering him desirable things like nice smelling incense and ghee wick and flowers and prasadam or sanctified food and so forth. So this arti ceremony is greeting the Lord, and it should be done with great enthusiasm, because by receiving the Lord, one embraces the Lord in the heart, and the sight of the Lord beautifully decorated, Radha and Krishna beautifully decorated, Sitaram, Lakshman Hanuman, Lakshmi Nrsingadev, Gaur Nitai, Jagannath Subhadra Baladev. It's a great source of pleasure and transcendental ecstasy for the devotees. So, it says here that the material body is a gift of material energy, technically called illusion. So that sounds like an oxymoron. And this is also explained in the 13th chapter, 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where it says that okay, 1 second. was right. It was the 13th chapter. Yeah. Okay. So it says, that material nature is the cause of all material, let's say, consequences. What are those consequences? Yeah. Karya karanam kartritve hetur prakritir uchyate purusha sukhadukanam bhoktritve hetur uchyate. Material nature is said to be the cause of all material causes and effects, whereas the living entity is the cause of the various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. So this is an important verse because it shows the difference between the soul and the body. The body is, as Prabhupada says, a gift of the material nature, technically called illusion. So unless we overcome this illusion, we remain entangled hopelessly in the material nature. And Prabhupada says, identification with the material body is due to forgetfulness of our eternal relationship with the Lord. So that forgetfulness is caused by two things. Number one, it's called two weaknesses of the heart. The first weakness of the heart is we become attracted to material nature. And by that attraction, we lose our affinity to Krishna, and we want to try and dominate material nature and people for sense gratification. And then the second weakness of the heart, and then because of that desire to dominate, we give up devotional service. And then the second weakness of the heart is we become successful to a certain degree in dominating material nature, and because of that we begin to acquire material possessions and also influence over people, and we become attached to those possessions and that exercise of power. And because we become more and more attached, it's called a hard knot of attachment. It's almost impossible to break it. And we remain in illusion and undergo successive births and deaths and so forth. And the entanglement becomes so great that it's virtually impossible to break it. Unless we meet genuine devotees and begin to hear about Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just like, anyway, we're going to discuss this verse some more, chapter 13, verse 21, because it says, the different manifestations of body and senses among the living entities are due to material nature. There are 8,400,000 different entities which are due to material nature. I'm sorry, there are 8,400,000 different species of life, and these varieties are creations of the material nature. It's just like when you want to buy a new car. Well, there's so many different varieties. There's cheaper varieties, middle-priced varieties, and high-priced varieties. And you can only buy what you can afford. In the same way, you only get a certain body that you deserve due to your previous karma. Right? You might desire a better body, but if you haven't the karma to get it, you don't get it. And the same with a car. You might want to start off with a Tesla, but you don't have enough money to buy it, so you end up with a Ford, or whatever you can afford. So these different bodies arise from different sensual pleasures of the living entity, who thus desires to live in this body or that one. When he is put into different bodies, he enjoys different kinds of happiness and distress. His material happiness and distress are due to his body and not to himself as he is. In his original state, there is no doubt of enjoyment. In other words, our original state is full of enjoyment. Therefore, that is his real nature. And that's our real nature, is to be happy. Anandamaya Bhyasat. Because of the desire to lord it over material nature, he or she is in the material world. In the spiritual world, there's no such thing. Everyone's happy that Krishna is the supreme dominator, the supreme Purusha. The spiritual world is pure, but in the material world, everyone is struggling hard to acquire different kinds of pleasures for the body. It might be more clear to state that this body is the effect of the senses. The senses are instruments for gratifying desire. Now, the sum total body and instrument senses are offered by material nature, as will be clear in the next verse. The living entity is blessed or damned with circumstances according to his past desire and activity. According to one's desires and activities, material nature places one in various residential quarters. The being, meaning getting different bodies, the being himself is the cause of his attaining such residential quarters and his attendant enjoyment or suffering. So nature is the cause of all material causes and effects, the body, etc. But we, as the soul in that body supplied by nature, are the cause of happiness and distress. We can't blame it on nature, because we're constantly making decisions. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. But both keep us entangled in the material world. So therefore, Prabhupada says, once placed in some particular kind of body, the living entity comes under the control of nature, because the body, being matter, acts according to the laws of nature. So therefore, there's no question of independence. We're being forced to act in different ways by nature. And no matter how hard we try to overcome that, we remain entangled. Either by the good reactions or the bad reactions, the good karma or the bad karma. Both of those things keep us entangled. At that time, the living entity has no power to change that law. Suppose an entity is put into the body of a dog. As soon as he is put into the body of a dog, he must act like a dog. He cannot act otherwise. And if the living entity is put into the body of a hog, then he is forced to eat stool and act like a hog. Similarly, if the living entity is put into the body of a demigod, he must act according to his body. This is the law of nature. But in all circumstances, the super soul is with the individual soul. That is explained in the Vedas, Mundaka Upanishad 3.1.1, as follows. Dwa Suparna Sayuja Sakaya. The Supreme Lord is so kind upon the living entity that he always accompanies the individual soul, and in all circumstances is present as the super soul of Paramatma. So that particular verse from the Mundaka Upanishad says that there are two souls in the heart of every living entity. One is the super soul, and the other is the individual jiva. And the super soul is sitting there as a witness, but hoping that the jiva will turn their attention to the super soul or Krishna and not be so enamored by the material nature that they ignore Krishna. So, and Krishna is more anxious that we come back to him than we are. Therefore, he patiently waits to see if we will take notice of him. So Krishna is the closest person to us. No one is closer to us than Krishna. But we are so enamored by the material world. We want fame, we want wealth, we want to be distinguished, we want knowledge. And there's so many different categories of knowledge. Some people study psychology, some people study science, some people study sociology, some people study archaeology, all these different branches of knowledge, and big books, and so many experiments you have to do, and field trips, and tests you have to pass. So people are entangled hopelessly in all this attempt. And what's the purpose of that type of knowledge? It's to master some part of material nature and some people, and exploit them for one's sense gratification. So these two birds the imagery of two birds sitting on a branch, one is the witness, one is the enjoyer. When the enjoyer becomes conscious of the witness bird, who's super soul, and then turns their attention to Krishna rather than being a little Krishna in the material world, then the living entity has a chance to become liberated from the whole cycle of illusion. And it is a cycle of illusion. Right? And then it says, Purusha Pakriti Stohi Bhunkte Pakriti Jani Gunai Karanam Gunasangasya Sadasad Yoni Janmasu. So this is a very famous verse. Prabhupada quoted it 1322, and he says that the living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. It's not possible to enjoy three modes of nature. It's suffering, actually. And this is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among various species. So this is a big verse, and it requires long explanation, and we'll look at it tomorrow. But all this is evoked by this purport today. And it says, for a pure devotee of the Lord like Bhismadeva, this illusion was at once removed as soon as the Lord arrived. Lord Krishna is like the sun, and the illusory external material energy is like darkness. In the presence of the sun, there's no possibility of darkness. There's no possibility that darkness can stand. Therefore, just on the arrival of Lord Krishna, all material contamination was completely removed, and Bhismadeva was thus able to be transcendentally situated by stopping the activities of the impure senses in collaboration with matter. This is a very profound statement, and we will look at this again tomorrow. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Let's put this.